And the other is something which is rarely talked about, but that will help you enormously with major life events or small events, negative events, if you can understand this. Listen carefully for anything that might remind you of yourself. This is a total disaster. I'm just too old. It's going to affect absolutely everything. Hi, it's good to see you. Welcome back. My name's Christine L. Conroy and this is Happy Stuff and Fluff. How are you doing? Are things going well? I hope they are, but I do have a question for you. What do you do or how do you behave when things are not going quite so well for you? Getting back into your mind just a little bit today, just a little bit. But yes, how do you behave when things are not going well? I don't necessarily mean major big life, negative life events, although what we're talking about today will certainly help with that. No, I'm talking about more everyday things that happen, when things go wrong or things that happen that upset you in any way. How do you deal with it and how do you behave? I think as humans, we do tend to be quite resilient when things go wrong. But in today's crazy, crazy world, things can go wrong that we would never even knew existed 12 months ago. And so we need resilience if we are going to continue to be living the good life I was talking about last time. We need to be able to cope with what life's going to throw at us. And as I say, as humans, we are quite resilient. We need mental toughness, yes we do, and inner strength. These are things that people talk about when we talk about resilience, but we also need empathy and flexibility. These are two important things that we need. I mean, have you ever wondered how one person, for example, a major negative event can happen to one person and they manage to deal with it, not only bouncing back. Now, I don't like that term, but it's a term that people kind of understand. But they don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. They bounce forward even more positively and stronger than they were before. But then you have the other person who may go through the same negative event, but who just cannot cope. And they slip into the downward spiral of negativity, which leads to despair and depression. And very often they are unable to function for the longest time. So what's the difference between those two people? Now, yes, you could say, well, one's resilient, one's obviously resilient, and one obviously isn't. You could say that. But there are many different components to resilience and to whether you are a resilient person or not. And I want to start by covering two of those things today that I believe makes the difference between those two people. One is self-awareness, which we talk about a lot on this channel because I believe that self-awareness is the first step to positive change. And the other is something which is rarely talked about, but that will help you enormously with major life events or small events, negative events, if you can understand this. And this is your explanatory style. So your explanatory style is simply how you talk to yourself about the things that happen to you. How you explain to yourself the things that happen to you. Sounds simple, but the impact of your explanatory style on your resilience is profound. Now, there is an optimistic explanatory style and a pessimistic explanatory style, but we're not just talking about optimism, pessimism. We're going a little bit deeper than that. So a person with an optimistic explanatory style tends to be more the resilient person in the face of challenges because they see setbacks as temporary, specific to certain situations and caused by external factors. This outlook empowers them to recover quickly, to learn from their experiences, and to maintain a positive attitude going forward. The pessimistic, on the opposite side of this, the pessimistic explanatory style, a person with that kind of style will struggle with resilience because they tend to view setbacks as permanent, pervasive, and personally caused. I'm going to dig deeper into these in a second. But they then become disheartened and are less likely to persevere in the face of adversity, and it's more likely to have a long-term effect, whatever the negative event is, to have a long-term effect on that person. Okay, so that's the first thing. So there are 3 dimensions to the explanatory style. I've mentioned them already. Marty Seligman calls them the 3 Ps: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalisation. I'll briefly want to go into the 3 now. Listen carefully for anything that might remind you of yourself. I want you to listen to see if you can recognise yourself in any of these. Okay, so one dimension to the explanatory style is permanence. So this refers to how long the impact of an event, or how long the impact of an event will be. So an optimistic person sees a negative event as temporary, and they believe that things will improve. So, if you're going through something right now, it's having the ability to say, okay, this is happening to me now because that's important. We're not being Pollyanna positive here. You recognise what's going on, but that you can say to yourself, this too shall pass, which is something I tell myself a lot. Not a lot because, not that often, but when I do need it, this too shall pass. That's what we're saying there. It's saying the optimistic person then believes that whatever's happening is only temporary, whereas the pessimistic person believes that the impact of the negative event will be long-lasting or even permanent, believing that the bad situation is going to persist indefinitely. So an example of that then, let's use an example of 2 workers, shall we say, who lose their job. Let's say they are office workers. They both work together and they both lose their jobs at the same time. One with the optimistic explanatory style thinks to himself, this is a setback. This is a real setback, but I am good at what I do and I think I'll soon get another job. Now notice he recognises the fact that it's a setback. He doesn't pretend there's nothing wrong. This is a real setback, but I'm good at what I do. I'm pretty sure I'll get another job soon. Where the pessimistic explanatory style, the person with that style would think, this is a total disaster. Oh, I'm just too old. I'll never get another job. Okay, so that's permanence. The second P is pervasiveness. So this is about whether or not you believe that the consequences of the event of what's happened are going to affect your whole life as opposed to one isolated area. It's going to affect absolutely everything. This is what pervasiveness is about. So the optimistic person will see negative events, as I say, as isolated and an isolated incident that does not affect all aspects of their life, whereas the pessimist will generalise the impact, believing that the event is going to lead to problems in all areas of their life. It's going to ruin everything. So the optimist who lost his job will think, I'll deal with this. I'll make some calls, speak to my contacts. I might even think about retraining. I'll soon be in work again. Whereas the pessimist might think, this is just awful. It's going to ruin my marriage completely. My friends won't want to know about me. And my kids are going to be so upset. So you see, it's affecting their personal life. It's affecting their social life. It affects everything. And then we come to the third P, which is personalisation. I think personalisation is probably the one that I deal with the most when I'm talking to people. This more than the other two, I think, is probably what I hear the most, because it refers to how you attribute the cause of what happens. So who or what is at fault. The person with the optimistic explanatory style tends to attribute negative events to external factors such as circumstances or even luck, whereas the pessimistic person will blame themselves for everything. It's all their fault. Everything. And they often internalise these events, seeing their what they would call failures as a personal flaw. So you see how that feeds back into the permanent situation, because it's them. They're the cause of everything. And so it's never going to change. So the optimistic person would think to himself, I lost my job because their business isn't doing very well and they can't afford to pay me anymore. It's just bad luck. Whereas the pessimist might be thinking, I knew I'd be fussed out because my boss doesn't like me. He never liked me. I should have offered to do more overtime. It's my fault I made too many mistakes. You see the difference? You see the difference. So those of you who are very observant may have noticed that explanatory style is heavily influenced also by growth and fixed mindset. So a person with a growth mindset is looking to learn from a mistake or learn from a negative event in order to do much better next time, or to think about how they could do things differently so that it doesn't happen again, or to be able to avoid the same situation happening next time. And they maintain a positive attitude going forward. Whereas a person with a fixed mindset will think this always happens to me and I'm never going to get any better. And as I say, this thinking often leads to despair and depression, or undesirable coping mechanisms such as alcohol, excessive drinking, and drugs. Now, the pessimistic explanatory style also very often includes lots of stinking thinking or faulty thinking. The good news about all of this, the good news about explanatory style and mindset and stinking thinking is it is not fixed. It is not fixed, and with a little effort, some self-awareness, empathy, compassion, and challenging some of your beliefs, your explanatory styles can be restored to a more balanced way of thinking. Now, the thing about these styles, explanatory styles, you may find that you are one way in one area of your life, but a different way in another area of your life. We all are. And when you recognise yourself as perhaps having a pessimistic explanatory style, do not judge. This is where empathy comes in. Have a little bit of self-compassion and understanding, and don't beat yourself up. There is no judgment here. We all use these things, as I say, in different areas of our life, but it's being able to recognise it and to be able to act upon it and change the way we're thinking. Incidentally, Marty Seligman again, he said that one of the most profound discoveries in psychology in the last 20 years is that an individual, i.e. you, can choose the way they think. You can choose the way you think. And so when you're about to slip into this kind of pessimistic explanatory style, you can stop yourself and instead take a turn and choose a better feeling thought. Now it's that we have to train you to do next. It's that being able to catch that, because we think automatically. It just goes on and on. Sometimes you can be thinking for half an hour, feeling really bad, and then feel, what was I thinking then? What was I thinking? You've been thinking like that for the last half hour. We've got to set triggers. We've got to train your mind, which I'm coming to next, to be able to give yourself just a few seconds, a few breaths, to be able to recognise you're thinking a certain way, let's try a different way. Or to be able to say to yourself, is this thinking helping me to get back to living a good life? And if it isn't, now you have the choice to change the way you're thinking. Oh, give me a thumbs up if this is helping you in any way, or if it's giving you food for thought. I'd love to know if you recognise yourself. As I say, no judgment whatsoever. So what do we do next then? This is all about self-awareness. If you're thinking now about these things, I've introduced the thought to you, and that's what I love about doing my channel. And because when you watch it, you're giving yourself that space to even consider these ways of thinking, which you wouldn't ordinarily do. So I hope this channel does that for you. What we have to do now is to train your mind to be able to be aware of your thoughts, and we're going to do that through mindfulness meditation. I'm doing it in a separate video because I know some of you may not want to be in a meditation situation. If you do feel like that, I understand completely, because I call it, when I'm doing my courses, I call it mind training. Unless, of course, you're into the spirituality aspect of it, then meditation, that's great. But this that I'm talking about here is more mind training. To train you to be able to recognise your thoughts and to give you that just split second to allow you to be able to choose your way of thinking. Because if you're not aware of your thoughts, how can you change them? If you're not aware of the way you deal with things and why you feel so bad, how can you improve? That's why self-awareness, as I always say, is the first step to positive change. So I'll leave a link to the Stinking Thinking playlist down below, or mind traps, which is another term for faulty thinking. So if you tend to catastrophize or worry too much or suffer from black and white thinking, watch that playlist from beginning to end, because it will really help you. And I would like you to watch this video in the meantime, which is about building resilience, but there's a nice little exercise in there that I think you will benefit from. So watch this video next, and I'll see you next time. Until then, remember that on the Happy Stuff and Fluff, we're getting happy, living longer and growing younger. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.